Hello and welcome to the second episode of our podcast, Insights Overflow. In today's episode, we talk with David Malan, who's a Regional Sales Director of Docuware. We ask ourselves, is your business ready for digitisation? Will it be around in the next 10 years? We talk about business process, automation, workflow, time travel, and how AI will affect your business in the coming years. We talk about all of this and more in today's episode of the Insights Overflow podcast. Hello and welcome to the Insights Overflow podcast, the show where we talk to industry leaders, customers, and partners about their successes and the lessons that they've learned. Today on episode 2, I'm joined by David Malan, Regional Sales Director for Docuware. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Lovely to be here. Looking forward to what we're going to chat about.
Good. So I think for me, the key things that I want to cover today, particularly when we talk about Docuware and digitisation, for me, documents and paper are sort of the first steps that a business needs to take in order to digitize. And usually they don't know what to do, they don't know how to do it. But the hardest thing is sort of just starting, right? So obviously Docuware is a leader in document management software, but it's more than that.
Yeah.
So I think maybe in a nutshell, you can tell me sort of what are the core things or the core problems that Docuware solves and how it actually benefits customers.
It's quite dangerous asking me a broad-based question like that because I might speak for 15 hours, you know me.
That's okay.
But you hit the nail on the head. People they've got to start somewhere, right? But documents contains data, right? It's all over the page. They're related to data that's sitting within the ERP system. They're related to data on other documents, right? And some of them's got to be collated. So what people are doing on a daily basis is processing information. And if we look at the traditional sense, what document management always was, it was basically, I want this document and I want to store this document effectively, maybe with some security and whatever. And this is now going to save me a lot of time because I don't have to walk to a filing cabinet. I don't have to worry if it's secure. I don't have to worry if I put it in the right place. So this is now already helping me, right? But in South Africa, unfortunately, we've skipped that little gap in the middle. And we've gone straight to the advanced gap because, yes, our economy is not the same as first world countries. The technology was available there before the time. So users kind of now want to skip that step and they want to go immediately to advanced phase. So we very often see implementations in advanced accounts payable, for example, automate accounts payable. And we see very advanced implementations of contracts management or even HR onboarding or something like that. So it's always good to start at a point.
I think as well, also what I've seen is that once, say, customers can see a piece of software and what it can do, they think less about their problems right now and they think about all the things that they might want to do with it in the future. And it's like, okay, just get back to basics a little bit, and a lot of the core thing, and probably you'll see this as well, you got experience in this, is that it's all sort of the receiving offices in businesses, like you mentioned, accounts payable, invoice processing, GRV processing, all those like hardcore sort of paper-based functions that businesses are trying to do.
Especially in finance,
Yeah, and I know, when a customer that we actually worked together, it got sort of even so advanced, like monitoring an email inbox for incoming quotation requests and then routing that quotation request to different salesperson depending on different rules. So it's kind of like there's such a broad base of problems that Docuware can solve, from the basic sort of paper to digitization piece, but all the way from, how do you actually automate the business workflow?
Yeah, and that is what kind of like even stalls initial sales engagements, initial conversations with customers when we do like workshops or high-level analysis. they ask those questions immediately, right? They get excited because they see this incredible world of automation sitting in front of them, what they can do with a digitized document. And then they want to know what else it can do and what else it can do and what else it can do and what else it can do. And I can continue that forever. And it obviously quite difficult to get people back to, let's focus on a process, let's focus on a department, let's automate something, and then we go to the next phase. Because as you say, I can basically automate anything within the paper-based world.
Yeah, and the thing about also document management, it doesn't exist in a silo. It's all part of a business process that involves other systems. So chances are people have got an ERP system, they've processed the order there, they printed it out, but this digital sort of fingerprint that follows it through and ends up in paper needs to get back.
Yeah.
And, the days of data capturing, I don't know if anybody's really doing that, but, with OCR and the tech where it's at now, you got to get that paper in digital form back into the core systems. So integration is a huge part of people's document management process.
Massive. Yeah, massive part. But you say, don't know if people still do it. I can't even remember when is the last time I got to a company that's not manually capturing data, right? It's what we do. We used to have a phrase many years ago when we did training, many years ago when we just started, 18, 20 years ago, and we had this phrase. I can't say exactly what the phrase was, but I'll give you an idea. It's like, but this is how we've been doing it, right? That's what customers are thinking.
Yeah.
This is how we've been doing it. Why
should I change?
Why do you want me to change now? It's working perfectly. I mean, consider a logistics company that is working on 3-ply pre-printed stationery that is hugely expensive, and they've got these order books in their trucks and things like that. There's only one reason they still use that technology, purely because that is how they've been doing it, right? And if you now want to come and tell somebody like that they've got to change their whole outlook on life and change their processes and become more electronic and try not even to print a piece of paper during the process, that is a little bit too much for some people to comprehend. But especially in finance, because in finance, it's a huge amount of data. I mean, every department's got their own challenges. HR is just a huge amount of documentation.
Yeah.
Finance is a huge amount of data. They capture that data manually onto the ERP, and they will for many, many years to come. Obviously, we are changing that slowly but surely, but there's a lot of businesses out there and a lot of people that needs to understand what technology can offer within the environment.
Yeah. And I mean, it's my understanding, like workflow wasn't always a part of Docuware, right? Or was there always? Yeah. So
it's a good one, actually.
I mean, to think about document management and like, oh, I just need a place to store my document. That's like probably like 1/4 of the value proposition. So maybe, I mean, I don't know how far back. I mean, you remember it without workflow?
No, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think I started with Docuware specifically in 2012. And back then, we did not have our graphical workflow designer.
Yeah.
We were on version 5 point something, and our graphical workflow designer was only launched in version 6.5. And before that, we had our task list. And our customers that listen to this will know what I'm talking about, because we still run our task list in Docuware. It's got a huge amount of value. It's doing some reporting for me, some live reporting on what I should focus on, but it's not necessarily a task. But that used to be our workflow.
Yes.
Everything needed to happen on a condition. Somebody needed to make a decision, or something came in and we read some data off the page and we made a decision. But what graphical workflow designing gives us the ability to do is intelligent decisions and calculations and routing decisions that obviously gives me significantly more value in things like parallel workflows, or even completely automating invoice processing with no human intervention.
Yeah. So what did they see in the market? Because probably, the partner network was maybe using it and almost trying to build those workflows. And it's when like the customer's problem is so obvious, it's like, we got to build this. Yeah. Like obviously it was a strategic decision by Docuware Germany to say, we're going all in on workflow. Yeah. And I think that was a phenomenal decision.
Yeah, it comes back to what you said earlier. Integration is so important because we've got ERP systems that's integrated in Docuware. So some would say, hey, maybe we need to develop an ERP system. That is not the game that we'll go into.
Yeah.
But people back then used Docuware as a repository of information, like a lot of document management systems out there, and they plugged workflow tools into Docuware to automate certain processes. So we know Docuware is quite integratable. The API is open. We've got a lot of standard connections now. iPaaS obviously integrated into OQLIS for data management. So there's a lot of integration happening there, and I think we've integrated, just according to our CRM system, with more than 600, 700 systems.
Wow.
So workflow was one of them. There was workflow tools out there that only did workflow. They still exist, but that obviously increased the price quite tremendously. And today in the cloud, you can get your full digitisation, you can get your document management, and you can get your workflow automation in there. But as technology evolves, there'll always be something new, right? There's something new that we can use to automate processes even further, like, for example, robotic process automation.
Yeah.
And those kind of things are being plugged into Docuware to even further automate processes. So as you see that more than 30, 40, 50% of your customers are starting to integrate into these solutions, then obviously it makes business sense to start integrating something directly into Docuware or make it part of the development rather than run it as a third-party solution. Yeah, so those 3 tiers of Docuware is obviously evolving constantly.
And workflow actually comes standard as part of the offering within
absolutely.
Docuware. Yeah.
So especially in the cloud, our customers pay per user and they have full access to all the digitization that Docuware offers, all the document management and security, and then obviously the workflow automation with that as well.
And that transition to the cloud for Docuware, was it quite an easy process sort of internally, or was there a bit of resistance? And it's like, what's this cloud thing? People want their documents on premise, Like, what did that process look like internally when it was like, okay, we need to go to this cloud thing?
Funny enough, emerging markets was first. Or let me rather rephrase, Docuware emerging markets was first. Because areas like the UK are still considered emerging markets for Docuware. Purely because we're a German company, right? So very, very strong in German-speaking countries, very strong in Austria and in Germany, obviously very strong in Switzerland. And the product's been developed since 1988. So that very conservative German market took a very long time to actually adopt cloud. We are now in the cloud for just more than 10 years. It's 11 years now. We just finished our 10-year campaign. And certain markets took significantly longer. And some markets that took long to adapt it initially did a very quick transition. Like, for example, South Africa. In 2016, we did 0 cloud sales. Nothing.
Wow.
And if you consider the cloud was launched in 2012, and it was already a very good product in 2016, people still didn't make the changeover. I think the primary reason was return on investment, was worried about where my data is sitting and things like that. And
Internet connectivity, something like that.
Which was a huge challenge. Before Microsoft Azure South Africa was a huge challenge. And in 2017 it changed. I think it was about 50-50. So it immediately went from 0 to 50-50. And then from there on, it was all the way over 80%. And I think it's now more than 95% of our customers now prefer to go cloud-based.
Wow.
Some of our very large enterprise customers still prefer on-premise. But most of our mid-size organizations that join Docuware are fully going on cloud. Our smallest customer is 5 users. For them to set up their own server environment makes absolutely no sense. But of course, for a very large organization that's got thousands of users on Docuware, could make more sense if they've got a very well-established IT environment to implement in the cloud.
And I think if we've learned anything from a pandemic point of view, if cloud isn't part of your strategy, you're going to get caught with your proverbials down for sure.
No, absolutely. You have to. Imagine you can only access your systems when you're in the office. That would be a disaster.
Yeah.
Of course, most of our on-premise customers still access their information remotely, but them not having to worry about upgrades and updates, and if their system is up and down, and they only have to worry about the internet connection, is obviously significantly less of a worry. But we are a very flexible company, so our cloud and our on-premise solutions are exactly the same. There's no difference between them. And it's really just a licensing model that you need to consider, because you can either be in a hybrid cloud environment where a lot of people share the costs of computing, and you basically only pay for the storage and the number of users you want on the system, or are you going to implement a bigger solution where you would prefer to manage that yourself? And that's really the only consideration. Everything at the end of the day could be cloud-based, right? So
exactly.
Yeah.
And Docuware's got a global footprint, across the world.
I think 110 countries now.
Wow.
And growing. Yeah. So
and, what are some of the strongest markets, and what are the markets that are really starting to sort of have an uptick?
I think everybody wants to hope that everybody is catching up to the German markets, but that is just...
Is the German market the primary?
Yeah, it's number one by a long shot. And
wow.
If you understand the economy, obviously now I'm working for a German company, so now I look a little bit biased. But what an economy, what a country, what a way of life, right? Maybe a little bit uptight. Very uptight. So, but very structured, very process driven, and the customers understand value. They fully understand value. They are significantly more evolved there than I would say even in the United States and in the US. The US obviously being our second market, if I consider that as a country, but it's of course a very, very large economy and a very, very large country. And then followed by territories like France, the UK and Spain, which is obviously significantly smaller territories. But we are incredibly strong in Spanish-speaking markets also, incredibly strong, and it's growing at a tremendous rate.
I think people, when you think of, say German machinery, German software, like there's definitely an association to sort of quality.
Are we going to talk about my German car next? Let's not do that. Let's not do that. I'll be here for 3 days.
Yeah, but sort of that sort of conservatism means that stuff's going to work, things are robust, proven. There's not cowboys sitting behind the scenes releasing stuff that's not going to work. I know we did a project with a property management company in South Africa, and we were pulling the data out and doing the reporting, and we'd show things on the dashboards and the visuals, and we'd look at something and be like, oh, there's something wrong with this. And then all the users were like, no, there must be something with the integration or something with Docuware. And then we'd go back, and each and every time it was a user error. Seldom was it the system, or if at all.
Yeah, so look, I mean, one's got to expect some problems, right? Yes. I mean, you can't always just have a smooth ride.
Yeah.
But if you now look at our cloud, which is even fully integratable with other systems, our uptime is more than 99.9% over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of German guys sitting there 24/7 monitoring the cloud environment with these screens right across the room to ensure stability of the system. I mean, it's the pride and joy. It's the main focus of the company, so you can expect that a lot is considered there. But yes, I'm not going to lie. I mean, we've obviously had 1 or 2 issues, but then I literally refer to 1 or 2, and obviously a user would rather blame the software than its own finger error or something similar, and that is why we even try to remove those finger errors.
Yeah.
Because if my finger errors are removed and I'm only reading data of a document, I'm extracting some information from an ERP system, and I'm trying to collate this information, then I can get really powerful information into my BI tool, into my dashboarding like OQLIS does. And that data that you're pulling directly from Docuware and then connecting to these other systems give the customer a huge amount of valuable information about his business. How long does it take my users to complete their tasks? How many invoices did I process last month? How many invoices didn't match the GRV and the purchase order?
Absolutely.
What is my VAT reporting? I get the list is endless, right? So I can now literally report on all of it.
Yeah, one of the things that we did with that customer was, whether it was good or bad, but they would capture certain utility bills would sort of move through the chain.
I remember that one. Yeah.
And if it was a certain value, it would be accepted or rejected based on certain things. We even had to go inside of the workflow data to look for specific text of notes people were putting inside the workflow just to like build rules. But the power at the end of the day was that they had a single version of the truth that they could sort of carry on with their normal document processing workflow or process, and then view that dashboard that sort of captured all their rules in a nice predefined way.
Yeah.
And I think one of the great things that sort of my first encounters with Docuware was how beautiful the data structures were set up. And obviously I'm biased thinking data is beautiful, but that was quite impressive to me.
The German influence.
Yeah. everything was so beautifully structured, and that concept of sort of the file cabinet being that table that you refer to, and even the workflow data, although it's quite complicated, it's all there and all accessible.
Yeah.
I think that sort of takes me to what I want to talk about next, is that you're taking this physical document, you're creating it into data, but that data needs to go somewhere. So it's either in ERP systems, it's got to inform a decision.
Yes.
But somebody's got to do something with that information. And, I know for us, that's a big gap that we've seen in, how do we take people's Docuware data and build dashboards and visualizations on top of it that allow them to sort of gain insights into, what's the status of particular invoices, who's taking the longest to process, how are actually people using Docuware to either make it more efficient or make the process more efficient. So I don't know, from your point of view, every customer that you've seen, how important is data for them at the end of the day, and are they actually making the right decisions on their data, or is there room for improvement? Like, what is your assessment of what people are doing?
I think I've had this own thought process and own battle in my head so many times for which companies actually understand the value of the data that they have. I mean, we've heard the term crap in, crap out so many times, and how clean is my data? Can I actually use it for reporting and so forth?
Yeah.
But if we consider a small business, less than 10, maybe 20 users within the organization, they are still dynamic, right? They still go to market quite effectively. It's easy. I've got one boss, and he's so involved in this business of him that he knows what user 1 is doing, what user 3 is doing, who's not lifting their weight, who's giving good customer service, and who's putting his brand out there so that his customers know that it's a great company to deal with. Now, slowly but surely, companies become bigger, right? Some do acquisitions and they grow organically, and some just simply do a very good job, and because of that, they become bigger. But the bigger they become, I've got to employ a couple of managers, and it becomes difficult to keep control over all of these people. And I mean, then data becomes even more critically important. But even that small company could have used data to better analyze what is really working for him. Because if I analyze that data, then things become clear, right? I could literally just do a couple of graphical reports based on data, like generating a tab and a pivot table within Excel that even gives me valuable information to understand what is actually happening in my business.
Yeah.
What am I selling the most? What am I not selling? Why am I not selling it? Is there somebody that's sitting on a quote for too long, or was an invoice been taking too long to process, and I'm making my supplier upset? There's so much that I can do with that data. So it should be absolutely critically important to all businesses, right?
Mm.
The problem is, if I take the data only from a CRM system or an ERP system, what am I sitting with? I'm sitting with data that users supply to me, right? And I'm in sales. The CRM, I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
It's admin. I don't want to do that manual work, right? I don't want to say who is my partners that's generated the most opportunities this month. I don't want to talk about how many proposals because that I've got to manually do. But the moment that I've got some automation with that data, then I can start automatically getting the stuff in the moment that it happened. When an invoice comes in, I know about it. When I send a quote to a customer, I know about it. And I've got now this beautiful set of data that I can integrate into a tool like OQLIS to give me this broad-based detail of my organization. And if I see something that looks interesting, I can drill down to something specific. And I can now literally manage my company while sitting behind my laptop. I still suggest talking to your people, but when you become too big, it's just impossible to talk to everybody, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Most businesses develop some sort of hierarchy, and also it might be that the guy or girl managing the process is not the one physically in Docuware. It might be that that's the case. But where do they go to understand, well, are they giving me good information, bad information? And they might not be trained, and so might not know how to navigate. So data becomes a tool for them to make sure that everything's running smooth. Show me the exceptions, what's happening today. All those things, maybe potential outliers. So that person viewing it is not necessarily the same person involved in the process. And how does that get communicated? And that gets communicated through the data. And the data doesn't lie at the end of the day, as long as the rules are in place. So I think it becomes strategically important for people using a system like Docuware to think about what they're doing with the data, especially when their organization gets a bit bigger or the implementation's a little bit more complex.
So it comes down to the point in the beginning. People don't view the accounts payable process as data, right? They generally don't. I mean, especially not somebody that's not the CFO. The CFO would view it as data because this data is incredibly important to him. He'll use it to calculate profit and loss. It will be part of his balance sheets. It will be part of his budget planning for next year, which is absolutely critically important to them, right? So especially if I have this multiple versions of data sitting all over the organization, it becomes critically important to be able to do it quickly and effectively without having to pull reports from everywhere, sit for weeks and months on end to try and analyze these reports for it to make sense. It's the 1950s way of doing something. As I said, South Africa skipped that couple of years and went straight to advanced.
I think what's also I found interesting about the Docuware market, and particularly the Docuware partner market, is that actually the people or the partners that adopted it the most were sort of the guys selling printers and papers and copiers, actually.
Especially initially,
Yeah, and I think the great thing about what they saw is that they looked at their customer base and they built a phenomenal customer base selling them paper, selling them ink and printers and all that. And they looked at it and said, okay, cool. Well, if we're selling less paper, we can sell more software. And they were already entrenched in those customers. And then I think they made the leap to say, well, I don't just want to be a supplier to my customer. I want to actually add value from like a insights point of view and
trusted advisor.
Exactly, a trusted advisor. And I think probably out of all the sort of software markets, they've probably done that the best to make that transition from just a hardware provider to a trusted advisor.
Yeah. And we've seen some gems coming out there, some gems of consultative people that wants to work with their customers consultatively.
Yes.
And initially it was difficult for the printer market. They used to this hit and run mentality. But when they start getting these gems coming through, they saw cancellation rates of less than 3% in their customers, and their customers sticking with them for 15, 20, even more years using the same solution, right? So which that can only mean one thing. Either they've got a gun to their head and tell them to continue paying them, or they're actually providing a really, really good service. And I think it's point B.
Yeah.
And the customers are, and obviously I know some of these customers, so I understand what that impact is. Some of our customers are true evangelists. They want to tell people about it, especially in the property industry that you spoke about. And the client that we discussed earlier has done maybe 5 or 6 or 7 calls for us with other companies of the same type to try and get them. And there's no benefit to him. We're not paying commission under the table or anything, for in case the competition commission is listening. It is literally their passion for the solution and how they understand how it evolved their business that makes them want to talk about it to other people. So I even on the video want to thank some of my customers. And now I remember I need to send somebody a box of chocolates. It's not a payment. She doesn't know she's getting it. So it's wonderful to see how people and even the salespeople, it's like, oh my God, my customers are actually loving what I am selling.
Absolutely.
I told somebody yesterday, she said, so you've sold a lot of Docuware. I'm like, well, I've been doing it been selling Docuware now for close to 11 years. I've been in ECM for about 18 years, but I can't recall ever selling it. Because generally they want to buy it. And
Correct,
I mean, it sounds arrogant and things like that. And people that know me knows I'm not arrogant at all. No. So it can't be that. But literally when somebody understands the value and they understand what it can do in the business, then it becomes easy to get somebody to request that you install it rather than you trying to force them to sell it to them.
And I mean, Docuware's growth has been driven by the strength of its partner network.
Absolutely.
Correct?
Our partners are our backbone.
Yeah.
And we've got quite an innovative system to try and get them to grow and things like that as well. But we've had so many companies that has completely shifted their focus to Docuware, and the rest of their offering becomes because of Docuware rather than to try and get business with something else and trying to sell that customer Docuware.
Yeah, and I think if the partners implement it and they know their customer the best, they've also got a long-term revenue strategy with that customer as well, because they're entrenched in the software and can continue to add value. So it's a call every 6 months to say, well, is there another process that you want to automate and do a mini project, keep engaging with that customer. So I think it's one of those areas that partners can continue to add value. And I think that's where we also see the strategic benefit from our point of view of our integration with Docuware being as seamless as possible, because we also know that partner network is going to talk data, is going to talk reporting, and they want something that they can sort of plug in and offer to their customer base that's sort of pre-configured, and then use that to consult to their customer again.
Absolutely, because that gives them the opportunity to show what is really happening, right?
Exactly.
And it gives them the opportunity to connect to that other data that Docuware is not necessarily connected to, or automating to help them with that. Yeah, we've seen a lot of excitement since Docuware has been, since OQLIS is becoming certified by Docuware now, visible on the webpage. So some of our partners have seen that, and they've seen some of the nice marketing stuff that you've put out on LinkedIn. So we're now getting a lot of questions, right? We're talking to people in Italy, we're talking to people in the UK and in the US, in Texas even, guys with the cowboy hats and things like that. So now we're becoming really diverse, right? And really becoming global, which is awesome, because those partners, they were looking for something. Yes, in the past we could have done maybe some basic reporting, and some people even reported on Excel, but to really automate that reporting is very powerful.
What struck me is that we engaged on this process with Docuware probably, maybe a year and a half ago, maybe even further back. I mean, we integrated with Docuware for that one customer, but we definitely saw it as a strategic imperative that we want to focus on. But what was so interesting is that when we spoke generically about connecting Docuware data, yes, there was some interest, but nobody really sort of bit what we were offering, because potentially how we were talking was maybe more abstract or not as tangible. But as soon as we, started engaging closely with Docuware to say, well, how do we get certified? How do we get that little icon in OQLIS to say, well, connect to Docuware and have the process happen? Before we had that, the partner network wasn't as responsive, but sort of the moment that we had that endorsement, it was like, the doors opened, and that sort of credibility just started happening. And then the conversation started happening. Nothing really fundamentally changed, between necessarily what we were doing before and after, but getting that stamp of approval was definitely a game changer for us to be noticed in the partner network and
taken seriously.
Yes, to be taken seriously. And I think, we also had a conversation the other day about, another company sort of offering sort of integrations into Docuware, and it is a market that you have to break into strategically. And I think that's definitely what we've seen now, over these last couple of weeks, is to say, okay, we need to make a concerted effort and treat Docuware as that strategic partner that, we need to make that process as seamless as possible. So even so far as that the entire sign-up process for a partner or customer is automated. That
to get onboarded,
Exactly. They can either onboard themselves, or the partner can facilitate that onboarding process. But what we've seen, and what was interesting when we were, Sean was having a chat with the Italian guys, he was describing the partner network and sort of breaking it down in terms of two types. And that's one of the things, like, I admit I got wrong. I thought it was actually the opposite, is that he said probably 80, maybe 85 to 90% of the market is almost a non-technical partners, and that 20-15% is sort of highly technical partners.
Absolutely. Especially the longer term partners, it's very technical.
Yeah. But in my mind, I almost had it the other way around. I thought, everybody's going to get this idea of data. They're going to think about building all this cool stuff and slicing and dicing the stuff. But if we look at the market, and say 80% of that market wants a canned solution and basically plug and play, click and go sort of thing, that was quite a revelation for me. And I think that's helped us align the way that our integration works, that somebody can sign up and basically going to get out the box dashboards, out the box
It gives them
insights.
powerful insight into
Exactly.
the
And
solution,
at least a starting point to build off of. Whereas, say, 6 months ago, I thought it was the opposite. We're going to plug people in and then give them the world of options.
Yes.
And they'll be able to figure that out, which some will, and some will see the power in what that can do. But definitely the majority of the market is interested in those pre-configured solutions. And I think that's another interesting thing, similar to how Docuware saw that workflow movement, and then now taking that workflow to say, well, 90% of people are using workflow for accounts payable or their finance process. Let's build out the box pre-configured solutions that you can sign up and go. So that
even matches the Docuware pre-configured solutions, right?
Yeah.
So that I know what's happening to my invoices within the pre-configured solution.
Exactly. So I mean, I've seen that, the benefit of that, and obviously Docuware saw the benefit of those pre-configured solutions. How successful have those pre-configured solutions been in the different markets? Like, has it helped the sales process or the implementation process?
It's huge impact on the implementation process, right? Maybe even a bigger impact on the sales process, because you have something significantly more tangible that you can show your customer. And that's always important. The more tangible it is, the better they understand it, right? Comes back to the discussion just now about which partners understood OQLIS and the requirement for data and which partners did not. And the very technical guys have obviously been doing something with the reporting. They've been in the market for a very long time. The customers needed it.
Yeah.
So they obviously did something with it. The guys that's not so technical, they went in, and when reporting came in, yes, we can take the data and we can put it into a BI tool. It wasn't easy for them to have that conversation. And the guys that was very technical and has been in the market for a long time was using something. It was more difficult for them. It was difficult to get the data out. It was more difficult to do the reporting, but it was an absolute requirement for them. So now with OQLIS, they are even getting excited. We're seeing the guys in Slovenia getting incredibly excited about OQLIS and how easy it is to integrate their data and how easy it is to create reports. So they already fully understand BI, right? They fully understand the need for analytics of data, but now it's just become easier for them. So sometimes it's a little bit hammer and chisel, just getting through that first layer of ice, and then people start seeing the value.
Yeah.
The pre-configured solutions most certainly has been very powerful in the United States, been very powerful in Germany. I think we had one guy selling over the phone, selling more than 3 systems a year, all pre-configured. That would be impossible in a consultative sales environment, because a consultative sales environment takes 6 weeks to 3 months, and then implementation, if fully understood, takes another month. So, I mean, it's still a very quick implementation process if you consider how much we're changing the business.
Yes.
But pre-configured solutions made it 3 days. I can show the customer immediately. I can have the pre-configured solution running and trained within 3 days.
And I think as well, the customer's looking for best in class as well. And they're not necessarily best in class. So they're looking elsewhere to say, okay, somebody tell me how I should run my accounts payable, and I'll just do that. So I think that's a big thing.
Especially the medium-sized businesses.
Exactly.
Yes.
They built from the ground up, maybe the owner managed, he doesn't know everything about everything.
Yeah.
So he's looking for that trusted advisor to say, well, what is the industry standard? I mean, if you even speak to the majority of people, would they know what a GRV is? Maybe not, like how to do it properly, So all these acronyms and all this tech, so I think that's a cool thing, is that out the box, they can get an industry standard that they can just adopt and become sort of best in class.
And even customize over time to something that suits their needs even better.
Yeah.
And it's been a revelation, of course. Of course, it's difficult to create pre-configured solutions for the entire world.
Absolutely.
Right? Every country is different. The finance system works different. But stuff that we use in the UK fits in very well in South Africa. And then obviously stuff that we create in the United States also fit in very well into other markets. And then the Germans are all on their own. They like doing their own thing.
Yeah.
But the pre-configured solutions have been very successful in those 3 markets in particular.
Yeah, and I mean, it's that starting point that allows you to configure. So even from a partner point of view, maybe your skill set that you need to have is that little bit less, because you don't need to start from the ground up. You can just know what buttons to tweak and what workflows to reroute to make it work for the customer. So the burden on the partner is a little bit less.
It makes it so simple for them and the customer to understand. As what we mentioned before, right? It's tangible. When something is tangible, when you show them something that is pertinent on their business, or you can show a partner what is pertinent on their business and their customer's business, then they quickly grasp it and then they can run with it. When things are a little bit more hypothetical and a little bit more consultative, and I've got to convince you that something is going to have an impact for you, then it's more difficult to understand. And that is the stumbling block for all organizations selling anything, right?
Absolutely. Especially software.
Especially software.
Yeah.
Because people really have to understand what you're doing. I sometimes go onto websites when we may be interviewing somebody and see where they're currently working, or taking a look at a competitor, and I open a website and I'm like, what do they do? You've got to go through a couple of tabs and about us and look at the history and who did they work with to actually start understanding what they're doing, because you get millions and millions and millions of different companies doing stuff like financial reporting or how to submit your tax. And these are all software, or even how to hire people and an onboarding solution and things like that. So if you're selling something like a holistic ECM like Docuware, and you've got to go sit in front of your customers like, I don't know any document-driven process, I don't know any data, I don't know anything, then it becomes quite a challenge. So these pre-configured solutions, especially for HR, invoice processing, contracts management, and things like that, just gives it a conceptual understanding of what is potentially possible in other processes.
How does Docuware see the world of AI? And say, if you think about what ChatGPT, and everybody's getting all like tizzed up on ChatGPT.
I even got excited about it. I won't tell you what I wrote the last day. My wife will tell you.
But how does Docuware sort of see themselves? Because I know from an auto-indexing point of view and the OCR, people can argue there's some AI there. I know they've built quite sort of generic classification models in some of the things.
Which is theoretically AI, right?
Absolutely. So how does Docuware sort of see this world of AI and how it's going to affect enterprises? Like, what's your take on that?
It's got to be massive, right? It doesn't have any other way than massive. I think there's still a very big gap between optical character recognition and text fetching of documents and digitization and robotics. There's a very, very big gap, because they need each other, right? The robotics is replacing what a user is doing. It's simulating a user's actions, but it cannot do things that humans can do. It cannot read. It cannot understand. And it from that perspective, AI is still got to evolve significantly. But we've actually had a project with the German government, or part of the German government, around digitization. That had basically a competition between German companies, German software developers, and intelligent indexing. Docuware's intelligent indexing service won the award, and they're basically investing in us to create a new intelligent indexing, a fully AI intelligent indexing that will more intelligently learn how to index documents.
Wow.
And that we're quite excited about. There's already actually a couple of updates in intelligent indexing that was pushed to our cloud environment to understand that. And just the other day, we dramatically increased the number of fields that we can read in intelligent indexing because of this new technology that is within intelligent.
Was there a limitation before?
Yeah, there was a 20-field limitation before, actually. And then we added the line item extraction to read line items,
powerful.
Which was quite big for us, because that now allowed us to do granular matching of information on invoices and statements to things like invoices and purchase orders within ERP systems to completely automate supplier recon processes, for example. So intelligent indexing is becoming stronger, and I think over the next four to 5 years, if we look at a long-term plan, it's going to continually develop. So you'll see some changes coming now in Docuware 7.8, which we're quite excited about. We're looking for some new changes in our forms development, and most certainly also in our workflow. And then within the next 2 years, we're also looking at a brand new web client, which will which will also include some AI functionality within the web client
Okay.
to give us the ability to integrate easier and run on different platforms, and give us the ability to smarter work with the data than the limitations that is currently within HTML5 frontend. So yeah, we obviously want to get more into that AI game ourselves. We are not certain that robotics is the route that we want to go. We believe they are completely separated, and I believe that there is a spot for robotics within any organization. But when it's document related, I do not really see the match between the two. Although simulating certain user actions with robotics is most certainly powerful. You can even integrate with the two, right?
Yeah. And I think if Docuware is the source of the system, basically if you've got that ecosystem of connectors that can connect to it, let the robotics experts sort of handle that sort of extra piece.
Absolutely.
And just sort of be that source of the document, because that's fundamentally where it all starts, right?
Yeah. Now you and I guess everybody will have a different way of explaining it, right? But if I had to take a look at a document-driven process where I have to take data off a document, I've got to collate that with information within the database and publish that information, I don't see robotics fitting into that place. Yes, I could use robotics for some of those actions, but I don't need to. It's data movement. It's calculations. It is posting of information and fetching of information within that finance process. But let's say, for example, a user has to, before we can process all of these invoices in the day, go onto a website to go fetch the exchange rate for the day for 8 different currencies, or a real estate company that has got to go fetch all of the new listings of properties that they can find on a web page. Then integration becomes a little bit more difficult to achieve with these third-party systems, and robotics will fit in quite nicely.
Yeah, very complementary.
Yes, yeah. So it's very much process dependent, I would say, but most certainly going to have a massive impact on the market.
And you also think that the world will sort of be fully digital, but it's kind of like everybody's starting a new digital transformation journey like every day, because it's kind of like you never get away
new technology
from you never get away from that manual process, or there's always somebody coming on board. I need to digitize, so there's always like a new customer, a new sort of entrant into the market that's looking to improve their business. So you think, with software being so good these days, everybody's digital, but that's sort of, even you think in 2023 that would be the case.
And it's
not the case, probably.
In South Africa, I can't even imagine it is 3 or 5%. I can't even imagine that 3 or 5% of businesses are fully digitized.
Yeah.
I mean, most certainly not the customers that we call on or that call on us, right? They have certain things sorted out, make absolutely no mistake.
True.
And I mean, I say this not in any funny way. I mean, this is reality, is that we've been doing it like this, and this is how we do it. And especially if you look at a department within your business that is not generating an income, right? The sales guys, I'd like them to work as effectively as possible. I give them a car, I give them a cell phone, I give them a CRM system. I want to know what they're doing, right? Because they're making me money. They're in the road, they're making me money. I want to know what they are doing. I give them a little bit of admin tasks to do as well because of that, which we can obviously help with. But I care about them a little bit more than I care about my HR department. Sorry, HR ladies, we love you. Because they're not generating me an income. Yeah. That is why you walk into 1,000 user companies that's got 4 people within HR. Why? Because they are not generating me money. Why? Same reason why the finance department has 10% of the amount of people within the sales department, because the more salespeople I throw at the problem, generally the more money I'll make. So, and it's those back-end processes of the business that is very often neglected. And that is... And that's our bread and butter, really. Although obviously the front end or the customer facing processes is also something that we can help with. So yeah.
And since the pandemic, how have you seen the market evolve? Are people, you don't need to convince them that digitization is where they should go. I mean, has it changed the sales process or the time to close a deal because there's less education you've had to do? Like, how has things changed since 2020?
So we did a case study just after the first or second lockdown of the COVID pandemic. And you can go look on the website there, of course. I won't mention any customer names now. But our customers stated that if you didn't have Docuware when the pandemic hit him, you literally don't even want to think about what would have happened.
Wow.
I think his words were, we would have closed down, but I don't think it would have had that impact. They're a very, very strong company.
Yeah.
But Docuware has completely changed the way they work, right? And it's not about letting people work from home. It obviously helps for that as well. It's not only about that. It's about being reactive. It's about not being reactive, but being proactive, knowing about something before it is a problem. And everybody being able to see that same information and interact on that same task and sharing that same level of information and working on the same information. And that was in the insurance industry, which obviously has a massive impact right now. Suddenly people can't work together, but they're processing claims, they onboarding new customers, and there's a lot of people involved in those processes. This is what the company is there for. So it's obviously changed that significantly. So we saw a huge jump after initial lockdown. Initial lockdown was very difficult for everybody.
Yeah.
And we saw a huge jump in customers onboarding remote working solutions and automation tools and being able to work remotely. Finance teams that were processing invoices in office now can't do it anymore. And since then, the trajectory has also being up at a slightly higher rate as before. But the initial jump of people adopting was actually quite incredible, very surprising and astounding that people very quickly realized they have to work more efficiently to reduce cost.
Yeah. Now, sometimes you do need a bit of an external event just to sort of rethink what those fundamentals are.
Get the computer to work in a little bit of a different way.
Just give it a boost.
give it a boost, And then the data analytics obviously became even a bigger problem because now I'm not even in the office. I don't even know what the oak is doing. I don't know if he's sleeping until 10. I don't know when he's opening his first email or processing an invoice or what they are doing. I have no idea. I need to understand my business better. And if I don't understand it better enough, I mean, you see that huge companies, if we take a look at huge companies, Apple, Microsoft, Google, half of them say, no, we're bringing everybody back into the office after they said they're selling the office. And half of them are saying, no, I'm going to sell all the offices. I'm not going to bring anybody back. And that's how they have this different opinion that tells me some of them's got a handle on it and understand what's going on in their business, even remotely. And some of them have as a challenge with that, to understand what is really going on in the business, to make sure that we can adapt to this new way of work.
Yeah, and I think it was so obvious is that just having ERP doesn't cut it. How do you remote work on ERP? Yeah, okay, well, if it's a cloud-based ERP, maybe. But, what about all those auxiliary things that happen? I mean, you see the amount of spreadsheets and Word documents that float around every organization and PDFs that gets emailed. It's crazy out there, so...
I've seen so many systems, and especially CRM systems, but ERP systems as well, where the GRV wasn't captured accurately because a user did it or he never did it. Received a delivery note and he never captured it. It's not his fault. Well, it is his fault, but it's not his fault. He's a human being, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, he's letting these things pack up. Now he's got to do it at the end of the day. How do you feel at 6 o'clock if you have to change a task and you've got to work a little bit later? But especially for salespeople, and I can say this because I'm one myself, we're a lazy bunch of people. We don't want to do manual work. We don't want to do admin. So if you show me a company that's got a CRM system that is updated by the salespeople that is accurate, those guys, you should be paying them triple.
Yeah.
Because they valuable people, right? We just don't do it, right? I mean, we simply do not do it. Doesn't matter how you incentivize us. We will do the minimum as you incentivize us. So you need to take a look at automating it a little bit more so that it's easier for the users or even automated for the users to complete their actions.
Are their customers using Docuware in their sales process as well?
Absolutely.
Not just an admin point of view or like a back office point of view?
Absolutely, especially in inside sales teams.
Okay.
Especially in teams that's on the road that need to be able to communicate with customers.
Docuware's got a mobile app, right?
Yeah. So we use the mobile app and the forms capability, of course, the Docuware forms capability for people to even collate information when they're on the road or collect information and even create documents in the background with that information. So that is very powerful. But it is especially powerful and start linking that content, understanding how many quotes has gone out, linking all relevant information to it, very quickly fetching information about the previous time I did a proposal for this customer, and it might be a salespeople that leave. I mean, it's an industry where people leave very often. So I want to make sure that I've got all of this information in a central place, all linked to that CRM data, and even sharing CRM data to update the CRM data and having actual documents available to me that is related to the data and the CRM system. So most certainly a very powerful process to automate within Docuware.
Yeah, those web forms that's an inspired feature as well. That has
It's
that
so
always
easy to create.
Yeah, has that always been there as well? Or was
No,
that,
actually not. That actually came after workflow.
okay.
And we even honest, it's a product that's going to evolve tremendously within the coming years. And the reason for that is quite simple. German company, once again, want to make sure everything is perfect before launching it. We bought a company in the United States called Westbrook Technologies. I'm going to lie to you when the year was. We'll edit the video afterwards to add it. But we bought them, and it must be about 10, 12 years ago, and they had a product called Fortis and Fortis Blue. They actually had some customers in Africa as well, some in Europe, but the bulk of their customers was in the US. And we bought them, and they had an incredibly powerful forms-based solution. And we obviously onboarded most of those customers onto Docuware, I believe more than 90%. And we also took their form solution and built it into Docuware. And that's where it was actually born. But most certainly a critical portion of ECM these days. It is more data related, right? But people still view that as a document as soon as it's completed.
Absolutely.
And it takes us away from that manual completion of documents, even if it is typed in on a computer in a PDF form and things like that, and makes it part of the system.
And I think it allows flexibility at the customer without like infinite customization. You know, you don't want to have like this custom code necessarily running at each customer. So it's almost like that perfect sandbox environment where you sort of drag and drop, build all your stuff, everything in the back end sort of standard, but you can really sit down with that customer and design what it is that they want to do, from the simple things. I know we were chatting to guys about how do they schedule cranes and where and what time the cranes are booked. You know, so now you're actually using Docuware as a booking system that then flows, that data then flows into OQLIS to view that as to where my cranes are. What does that schedule look like?
At the time of it happening, right?
At the time of it happening.
That's powerful stuff.
It's very, very powerful. And previously, the way that people would have to do that is either build a custom developed application or try find one off the shelf that does their specific niche. You know, so it's
that's always the challenge.
Yeah, and that's very powerful. You can sit down with a customer, understand what it is that they're trying to do, and almost build that experience in front of them and have it work reliably.
Yeah, that form, I think if you really don't know what you're doing, will take 30 minutes to develop, right?
Exactly,
And drag and drop it into the field, type a little bit and change the names.
Exactly.
Connect it to index fields and off you go.
Exactly. And I think, you know, us being in the software space, we understand the power of it being in a database, you know, and the relationships that it has once it's in the database, the authenticity of the transaction in the database, the reliability. You know, where previously somebody would have an Excel spreadsheet and emailing that around, and their version of the spreadsheet doesn't work, and, you know, oh, they had this version of the booking in,
and then they still have to update the backend system.
Exactly.
And by the time they've updated the backend system, the document was traveling around is already sitting on version 30 and the wrong data is captured.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, that's obviously the workflow gives us. The workflow gives us so much power around that form that it continually evolves, and that live data is always available. So if you connect that into something like OQLIS, then I know exactly what's happening, right? I'll even know if the guy is using the crane already or not.
Exactly.
So that is most certainly very powerful.
I think part of the danger is like, what can't you do in a way? Like that becomes
you've got to let your mind go.
That's the real question, is like, okay, well, you can basically build full on, almost, you can think about it as micro apps in a particular business. You know, maybe that's the future as well. You know, businesses will be run on micro apps built in an ecosystem of other bigger applications. And, you know, maybe that's the bandwagon ERPs missed. And maybe that's what SAP tried to do in sort of like custom building modules inside of SAP. Maybe that's the gap that they saw. You know, but, you know, seldom do you go off the shelf and say, okay, Mr. Customer,
Yeah, that is very
solves all your needs. It's always a bit of tweaking here and there. So maybe that's what the future looks like. Customers will have a couple of core systems that all talk to one another, but inside of that, they'll have that ability to custom design their workflow for them, or a particular UI.
And quickly and rapidly, and so that they can quickly adopt a new business process or a new product and something that they've got to develop for it, without having to go to market and taking 6 months to a year to develop something.
And fundamentally, everything that drives that is that data layer and maintaining the consistency of how it's inserted, updated, and reported on. So that's going to be almost the new ERP, is like that sort of data layer.
And all that's important is how you're visualizing it to the user, right? The user doesn't have to understand the data. They just have to understand how it works.
Yeah, maybe the long-term future is, all these connected systems, and if enough customers use it, maybe that's the next step for AI in enterprises, to say, well, we've seen 1,000 of these types of customers. Let's automatically determine some sort of insights across this ecosystem of data that tells them, okay, you should be focusing on this, you should be focusing on that, and not actually predefining those rules beforehand. Maybe that's what the future looks like.
If we continue talking like this, we might talk about time travel. But yes.
Well, that's the power of technology, isn't it? That it's essentially time travel, and time travel for the businesses that are going to be successful in the future. I know
how quickly they can adapt.
Yeah, I mean, you speak to anybody that's done an MBA, and then they'll tell you, like, the way that they do presentations. They say, okay, cool, here's a list of businesses that didn't adopt technology. Guess what? They don't exist anymore. And here's the ones that did. Yeah. That's how they talk. And you can see that happening. If you don't embrace the technology and see the benefits that it can add for you, there's a couple of years are going to go by, and there's an interesting quote that Bill Gates made. He said, people overestimate how much things change in 2 years, but they underestimate how much things change in 10 years. Yeah. So we always think, the AI revolution's here, and, it's 2 years away. Maybe not that drastic, but 10 years from now, things are very, very different.
Businesses want to run effectively, right? Microsoft laid off 35,000 people. Was it last month? They grew so quickly post-pandemic, because the pandemic obviously had this massive hit on everybody. And they grew so quickly, and then a change in processes to make the company more efficient basically meant we need to be profitable. And if we are not profitable, then it either means we've got to reduce users, or we've got to significantly increase our sales. And that's what businesses need to adapt. If I am efficient, I can grow quicker. If I'm not efficient, then I can't. And effectively, we want businesses that are growing out there. We want loads of them that's growing, because that's going to help the economy. That's going to help us employ more people, right? The more efficient our economy is, the more efficient businesses are, and the more business they are doing, and the more effectively they're doing business, basically means job creation, basically means better businesses. And that is what needs to happen. And those businesses that's not efficient, they're not going to make it.
Yeah, if you're an economist, basically we in fighting inflation with productivity.
That's it. So we can now become president. That's what you're saying. We figured it out.
Yeah, I think so. At least of the Reserve Bank.
Yeah.
So I think, David, to wrap up, I think I want to sort of sketch a vision for the future, right? So where does Docuware see themselves in sort of that 2 to 10 year horizon? And where are they looking to position themselves in the market strategically? Like, what's their long-term vision?
Look, if I take a step back and I talk about us as an organization and our values and our goals and our mission, it's all around customer centricity and ethics and doing proper business. And that needs to be the core of everything that we do, even if we look at the strategic vision, right? That needs to be the core. We need to make sure that we keep our customers. We need to make sure that we provide a brilliant service, and that our customers want to stay with us, and that they want to tell people that they do business with Docuware. And that must be the goal. It must be the absolute backbone of what we're doing. But for us to keep our customers and keep them happy, we need to stay with the times. We need to evolve with technology. And we need to make sure that if there's new technology available, we take it to our customers and as quickly as possible. Post-pandemic has been incredible growth for us. So we are actually at this stage in time, we are consolidating. We are consolidating, and we've got a lot of positions open. I think we are onboarding between 10 and 25 people every month. It's a massive growth, massive growth for the organization. We're even looking for developers, and they're quite difficult to find because, especially in these first world countries, Germany and the UK, the resources are scarce. It's not abundant. And we need to consolidate at this given point in time to make sure that we've got enough resources from a human capital perspective to be able to onboard that new technology as and when it becomes available. And that's a massive drive for us. But to answer your question directly, we want to be the leader, right? We are most certainly close, if not the leader, within our cloud technology. And we want to make sure that we remain there. And we want to make sure that we continue driving technology. So AI, very, very important. Making sure that we have all of those technology points that is available in the market, available to our customers, and that we're constantly delivering it. And even beautiful thing for free in the cloud, right? So within 5 years, most certainly be the leader within ECM, having those technology available for our customers to use and making sure that we keep our customers.
Well, thank you very much, David, for being
Thank
here.
you.
And
It was a great chat.
Being on episode 2 of the Insights Overflow podcast. And I'm sure the insights were overflowing.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
Time travel. All right. Thank you very much, Andrew. It was great being here. It's always great working with OQLIS. Always a dynamic team, always energetic, right? Especially if we talk about Sean that's sitting there in New Zealand now and how he always approaches the market and your own excitement around the technology. It's always great to engage with you guys, and I'm looking forward to a great working relationship going forward.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been wonderful. So thank you very much for watching the Insights Overflow podcast. This has been episode 2 with David Malan from Docuware. Thank you very much.